The dust had barely settled on her father's grave when Olivia Morgan realized she would have to work twice as hard as any man in Fort Bridger, Wyoming, just to keep her younger siblings from starving. It was the summer of 1882, and the sun beat down mercilessly on the high plains as she stood in the cemetery, her mother's hand trembling in hers, her three younger brothers standing silent and confused beside them. Her father had been thrown from a spooked horse 2 weeks prior, his neck broken instantly, and now the responsibility of keeping the Morgan family afloat fell squarely on Olivia's 19-year-old shoulders. The ranch they lived on, a modest spread of 30 acres with a dozen cattle and twice as many chickens, had been her father's pride. But it was too small to sustain them, and her mother's health had been failing for years, her lungs never quite recovering from the pneumonia that had nearly killed her the winter before. Olivia's brothers, Thomas, William, and young Henry, were 14, 11, and 8 respectively, too young to take on the burden of providing for the family, though Thomas tried his hardest to be the man of the house now. Within 3 days of the funeral, Olivia had secured work at the neighboring Henderson ranch, mucking stalls and mending fences for $1 a day. It was back-breaking work that left her hands blistered and bleeding, but she never complained. She would rise at 4 in the morning, complete her chores at home, ride the 3 miles to Henderson's property, work until sunset, then ride back to cook dinner for her family and collapse into bed only to repeat it all the next day. But even with her wages, it was not enough. The mortgage on their small ranch was due quarterly, and the next payment loomed like a thundercloud on the horizon. Medical bills from her mother's ongoing treatment piled up on the kitchen table, and her brothers needed shoes, clothes, food. So Olivia took on a second job. The Crawford Ranch, 5 miles in the opposite direction from Henderson's, needed someone to help with their expanding horse breeding operation. The owner, a gruff old widower named Samuel Crawford, had hesitated when she showed up asking for work, but when she demonstrated her way with the horses, gentling a skittish mare that none of his regular hands could approach, he relented. Another $1 a day, but it meant she was now working from dawn until well past dark, catching sleep in scattered hours, her body pushed beyond what she thought possible. Her mother wept when she realized what Olivia was doing, working herself to the bone across 2 ranches, but what choice did they have? Pride would not feed hungry children or keep a roof over their heads. Olivia would ride from Henderson's ranch to Crawford's in the midday heat, barely stopping to eat the hard biscuits she carried in her saddlebag, then ride home under the stars. Sometimes so exhausted she would doze in the saddle and trust her horse to find the way. The men at both ranches treated her with a mixture of respect and pity. Some made inappropriate comments at first, but Olivia had her father's sharp tongue and her mother's fierce dignity, and she quickly established that she was there to work, nothing more. Most of them came to admire her grit, even if they would never admit it aloud. A woman doing a man's job was unusual enough, but a woman working 2 ranches simultaneously was unheard of in Fort Bridger. 6 weeks into this brutal schedule, Olivia was checking fence posts on the far western boundary of Crawford's property when she saw a rider approaching. The sun was beginning its descent, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, and she had to squint against the glare to make out the figure. As he drew closer, she could see he was tall in the saddle, sitting with the easy confidence of someone who had spent his entire life on horseback. His hat was pulled low, and he wore a long duster coat despite the summer heat. He reined in his horse a respectful distance away and tipped his hat. The gesture revealed a face that was sun-bronzed and handsome in a rugged way, with clear gray eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. He appeared to be in his mid-20s, perhaps 25 or 26, with dark hair that curled slightly at his collar and a strong jawline shadowed with a few days' worth of stubble. "Afternoon," he said, his voice a deep rumble that somehow seemed to fit the landscape perfectly. "I am looking for Samuel Crawford. This his land?" "It is," Olivia replied, straightening up from the post she had been examining. Her back ached, and she knew she still had to ride to the Morgan homestead after this, then prepare dinner, then help Thomas with the reading lessons he struggled with. "He is up at the main house, about 2 miles northeast. Follow this fence line and you will see it." The stranger did not immediately turn to leave. Instead, he studied her for a moment, his expression thoughtful. "You work for Crawford?" "I do. Seems late for fence work." "Sun will be down in an hour." Olivia felt a flash of irritation. She did not need some stranger commenting on her work schedule. "I am aware of the time. Was there something else you needed?" A slight smile tugged at the corner of his mouth, as if he appreciated her directness. "Name is Colt Kincaid. I am a horse breeder from Colorado looking to expand my operation. Heard Crawford has some fine stock." "He does," Olivia confirmed. "Like I said, main house is that direction." "You know horses?" Colt asked, dismounting with fluid grace. He approached the fence where she stood, and she noticed he moved with a slight limp, favoring his left leg. "An old injury, perhaps." "I know enough to do my job." "Which mare would you recommend from Crawford's current stock, if you had to choose just one for breeding purposes?" Olivia hesitated. It was an odd question to ask a fence mender, but something about Colt Kincaid made her want to answer honestly. "The bay mare in the east paddock. She has excellent conformation, a calm temperament, and she comes from a line of strong, healthy horses. Crawford does not realize what he has with her because she is not flashy, but she would produce exceptional foals with the right stallion." Colt's eyes lit up with interest. "You do know horses. That is the exact mare I was hoping to inquire about. Saw her when I rode past the paddocks earlier." "Then you have a good eye. So do you." He paused, then said, "I am actually in Fort Bridger for more than just buying horses. I am looking to hire someone for a specific job. Short-term work, but it pays well. You interested?" Olivia's heart jumped, but she kept her expression neutral. "What kind of job?" "I purchased a herd of 20 wild Mustangs from a rancher up north. Good horses, but they need to be broken properly, gentled and trained for riding and ranch work. It is about 3 weeks of intensive work, maybe a month depending on how they respond. I will pay $50 for the job." $50. Olivia's mind reeled. That was nearly 2 months' wages from both her current positions combined. That was enough to make the mortgage payment with money left over for medicine, for food, for the shoes her brothers desperately needed. But 3 weeks of full-time work meant leaving her current positions, and what if Crawford and Henderson would not take her back afterward? "That is generous pay," she said carefully. "Why so much?" "Because it is hard work, and because I need someone who actually knows what they are doing. I have seen too many horses ruined by rough breaking, beaten into submission instead of trained properly. The way you handled Crawford's mare earlier, I could see you understand horses. They trust you. That is worth paying for. You watched me with the mare. I was riding the property line when I saw you in the paddock. You probably did not notice me. You were focused on the horse, which is how it should be." He leaned against the fence post. "Look, I will be straight with you. I can hire any of a dozen cowboys in this territory to break those horses. But most of them will do it fast and hard, and the horses will be usable but never reach their full potential. I want horses that are partners, not slaves. From what I saw today, I think you can give me that." Olivia chewed her lower lip, thinking hard. 3 weeks. Could her family manage without her wages from Henderson and Crawford for 3 weeks? The $50 would more than compensate, but it was a risk. And yet, opportunities like this did not come along every day. I have obligations, she said finally. A family depending on me. I am working 2 ranches right now because we need the money. If I take your job and leave my current positions, I cannot guarantee they will be there when I am done. Colt's expression softened with understanding. 2 ranches. No wonder you look dead on your feet. When she bristled, he held up a hand. Not an insult, just an observation. That is an impossible schedule for anyone. He was quiet for a moment, then said, "Tell you what, $50 is the base pay for the job. But if you can gentle and train all 20 horses in 3 weeks instead of 4, I will pay you 75. That is more than 3 months of wages at 2 ranches, if my math is right. $75. Olivia felt dizzy at the thought. That would not only cover the mortgage and bills, but give them a cushion, a small buffer against disaster. It might even be enough to hire help on their own small ranch, take some of the burden off Thomas's young shoulders. Where would this work happen? She asked. I have a temporary camp set up about 10 miles south of here, near the river. Good grazing, water, space to work the horses. You would need to stay on site, at least during the weekdays. The work has to be consistent every day to be effective. I cannot leave my family for 3 weeks straight. Sundays off, Colt offered immediately. You ride home Saturday evening, come back Monday morning. That gives you 1 full day a week with your family. Olivia closed her eyes, weighing the options. The responsible choice, the safe choice, was to decline and keep her 2 steady jobs. But the responsible choice was also slowly killing her, and she knew she could not maintain this pace forever. Her body was already showing signs of breaking down, her hands perpetually sore, her back constantly aching, exhaustion seeping into her very bones. And $50, potentially 75 for 3 weeks of work. It was almost too good to be true. Why me? She asked, opening her eyes to meet his gaze directly. Really? You do not know me. You saw me with 1 horse for a few minutes. Why are you offering me this job? Colt was silent for a long moment, and something shifted in his expression, became more serious. My mother was a widow with 3 children, he said quietly. After my father died, she worked herself into an early grave trying to keep us fed and clothed. I was the oldest, but I was only 12 when he passed. I watched her sacrifice everything, watched her fade away year by year until there was nothing left. She died when I was 16. He looked out across the prairie, his jaw tight. When I saw you in that paddock, exhausted but still gentle with that mare, still taking the time to do the job right even though you were clearly running on empty, I saw my mother. And I thought, if someone had given her an opportunity, just 1 good opportunity to earn enough to make a real difference, maybe she would have survived. Maybe we all would have had a different life. The raw honesty in his words struck Olivia deeply. She understood loss, understood the crushing weight of responsibility, understood the desperation of trying to keep a family afloat against impossible odds. In that moment, she made her decision. I will do it, she said. 3 weeks, $75 if I complete the training in that time. Sundays at home with my family. A genuine smile spread across Colt's face, transforming his features from merely handsome to something that made Olivia's breath catch unexpectedly. You will not regret this, he said, extending his hand. We have a deal. His hand was calloused and warm when she shook it, and Olivia felt a strange current of energy pass between them. She withdrew quickly, suddenly flustered in a way she had not been moments before. When do I start? She asked, focusing on the practical details to steady herself. Day after tomorrow. That gives you time to settle things with your current employers and your family. Day after tomorrow, she agreed, telling her mother was harder than Olivia expected. Catherine Morgan listened to the plan with growing alarm, her pale face drawn with worry. They sat at the scarred kitchen table while the boys played outside, the evening light casting long shadows through the windows. 3 weeks away from home. Olivia, you do not know this man. What if, Mama, it is $75? Olivia interrupted gently. $75 for 3 weeks of work I already know how to do. That is more than I make in 3 months at both ranches combined. We can pay the mortgage, get you the medicine Dr. Harrison recommended, buy Thomas and William and Henry what they need. But you will be alone with this stranger. It is a business arrangement, nothing more, and I will be home every Sunday. Olivia took her mother's frail hand. Mama, I cannot keep working the way I have been. I am so tired. This job, if I can do it right, it gives us breathing room. Real breathing room. Catherine's eyes filled with tears. I hate that you have to carry this burden. You should be courting, thinking about your own future, not sacrificing yourself for us. You are my future, Olivia said firmly. You and the boys. We are a family, and families take care of each other. Papa would have done the same. Eventually, her mother relented, though the worry never left her eyes. Thomas, with the seriousness of a boy forced to grow up too fast, made Olivia promise to come home if anything felt wrong. William and Henry were simply excited about the money, already planning what they might buy with their share. Leaving Henderson and Crawford was simpler. Henderson grumbled about the inconvenience but admitted he understood, and Crawford, surprisingly, seemed almost relieved. You have been working yourself to death, girl, he said gruffly. 3 weeks of one job instead of months of two might actually let you sleep. Position will be here if you want it when you are done. 2 days later, Olivia packed a small bag with her few possessions, kissed her mother and brothers goodbye, and rode south toward Colt Kincaid's camp. The summer morning was clear and beautiful, the mountains in the distance still capped with snow despite the heat of the valley. Her horse, a sturdy mare named Clementine that had been her father's, seemed to sense her nervous energy and tossed her head as they rode. The camp was exactly as Colt had described it, situated in a bend of the river where cottonwoods provided shade and the grass grew thick and green. A large canvas tent was set up near the water, and a rope corral contained the 20 mustangs, all in various shades of brown, black, and gray. They were beautiful animals, wild and wary, their eyes rolling nervously as Olivia approached. Colt emerged from the tent, and Olivia noticed he had cleaned up since their last meeting. He was freshly shaved, his dark hair still damp, and he wore clean clothes that somehow made him look even more appealing. She mentally chided herself for noticing. Right on time, he said, greeting her with that same easy smile. Let me show you around. The camp was well organized and thoughtfully laid out. In addition to the main tent, which Colt explained was his sleeping quarters, there was a smaller tent set up on the opposite side of the clearing. Your quarters, he said. I know you were probably worried about the arrangements, but I want you to know you have complete privacy. I take my meals by the fire. You can take yours wherever you are comfortable. The consideration touched her. She had been worried about the propriety of the situation, knowing that if word got around Fort Bridger that she had spent 3 weeks alone with a man, her reputation would be ruined. But Colt seemed aware of these concerns and had taken steps to address them. Thank you, she said quietly. I appreciate that. I was raised right, he said simply. My mother would come back and haunt me if I was anything less than a gentleman. He gestured toward the corral. Want to meet your students? They spent the next hour discussing the horses. Colt had notes on each one, where they had come from, any behavior he had already observed. He was clearly knowledgeable about horses, but Olivia was impressed by how much he valued her opinion, asking her assessment of each animal, listening carefully to her observations. "You really do know what you are doing," she said finally, surprised. "So why do you need me?" "Because I know my limits," Colt replied. "I am good with horses, but I am not great, not the way you are. And because I have business to attend to over the next few weeks, buying and selling stock, making connections, I cannot be here every hour of every day the way this job requires. I need someone I can trust to do this right, and after watching you work, after talking with you, I trust you." The confidence he placed in her was both flattering and terrifying. $75 suddenly seemed like a lot of money for something she might fail at. As if sensing her sudden doubt, Colt added, "You can do this, Olivia. I would not have hired you if I did not believe that completely." They started work that afternoon. Olivia's approach to breaking horses was nothing like the brutal methods employed by most cowboys. She did not believe in bucking broncos into submission or using harsh bits and spurs to force compliance. Instead, she spent hours simply being present with the horses, letting them grow accustomed to her scent, her voice, her movements. She would stand in the corral, sometimes not even looking at the horses directly, just existing in their space until curiosity overcame fear and they would approach her. Colt watched from the fence for a while, fascinated by her patience. Most people would have been frustrated by the slow progress, but Olivia seemed content to let the horses come to her on their own terms. By the end of the first day, 3 of the more curious mustangs were eating grain from her hand. That evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in brilliant shades of red and gold, they sat by the campfire, eating the simple meal Colt had prepared. Olivia was exhausted, but it was a different kind of tired than she had felt working 2 ranches. This was the fatigue of focused effort, of meaningful work, rather than the soul-crushing exhaustion of desperation. "Where did you learn to work with horses like that?" Colt asked, poking at the fire with a stick. "My father," Olivia said, her voice soft with memory. "He had a gift with animals. He used to say that fear and trust were 2 sides of the same coin, and if you could understand what made an animal afraid, you could figure out how to earn its trust. I watched him gentle horses that other people had given up on, horses that had been ruined by rough treatment. He taught me everything he knew. He sounds like he was a good man. He was the best man I ever knew." Olivia stared into the flames. "When he died, it felt like the whole world shifted. Like everything I knew was suddenly unstable. My mother is not strong enough to work, and my brothers are too young, and suddenly I was responsible for keeping everyone alive. Some days I am still not sure I am doing it right." "You are," Colt said with certainty. "You are working 2 ranches to feed your family. You are taking on this job to give them a better life. That takes courage most people do not have. It does not feel like courage. It feels like survival. Sometimes they are the same thing." He was quiet for a moment, then added, "My mother used to say that courage was not about being fearless. It was about being terrified and doing what needed to be done anyway. By that measure, you are one of the bravest people I have ever met." Olivia felt her cheeks warm and was grateful for the darkness that hid her blush. There was something about the way Colt looked at her, spoke to her, that made her feel seen in a way she had not experienced before. Not as a burden or a workhorse, but as a person worthy of respect and admiration. They talked for another hour, sharing stories about their families, their lives, their dreams. Olivia learned that Colt had spent years working as a ranch hand before saving enough to start his own horse breeding operation. He had a small spread in Colorado, just 50 acres, but it was his and he was proud of it. He dreamed of expanding, of becoming known throughout the territory for producing quality horses that were well-trained and reliable. "What about you?" he asked. "What do you dream about?" Olivia had to think about it. For so long, her only thoughts had been about survival, about getting through each day, that she had forgotten she was allowed to dream. "I want my family to be secure," she said finally. "I want my mother to have the medical care she needs without worrying about the cost. I want my brothers to have opportunities, to get an education, to choose their own paths instead of being forced into whatever work they can find. And I suppose, selfishly, I want a moment to breathe. To not feel like I am constantly running just to stay in place." "That is not selfish," Colt said gently. "That is human." As the fire burned down to embers and the stars emerged in full glory above them, Olivia excused herself to her tent. She lay on the bedroll Colt had provided, listening to the sounds of the horses moving in the corral, the river flowing nearby, and allowed herself to feel something she had not felt in months: hope. The days fell into a rhythm. Olivia would wake before dawn and begin working with the horses, gradually introducing them to halters, to lead ropes, to the sensation of being touched and groomed. Colt was often gone during the day, attending to his business in Fort Bridger and surrounding areas, but he always returned in the evening, and they would share meals and conversation by the fire. She found herself looking forward to those evenings more than she wanted to admit. Colt was easy to talk to, with a dry sense of humor that made her laugh and a thoughtfulness that suggested he really listened when she spoke. He would tell her about the people he had met that day, the deals he had made or declined, and she would share updates on the horse's progress. But they also talked about deeper things, about loss and hope, and what it meant to build a life worth living. By the end of the first week, all 20 horses were accepting halters and leading without panic. Olivia was pleased with the progress, and Colt was amazed. "I've never seen anything like it," he admitted, watching a previously skittish black gelding follow Olivia around the corral like a devoted dog. "It is like you are speaking their language." "In a way I am," Olivia replied, running her hand along the gelding's neck. Animals communicate with body language with energy. Most people are too loud, too aggressive. They try to dominate instead of cooperate, but horses are herd animals. They are looking for leadership, not dictatorship. If you can be calm and confident and consistent, they will follow you willingly. Colt shook his head in wonder. "You should be teaching others this method. You could make a real name for yourself." "Maybe someday," Olivia said, though she could not quite picture it. Her world felt so small right now, confined to survival and responsibility. The idea of a future where she had the freedom to pursue her own interests seemed like fantasy. Saturday evening of the first week, Olivia packed her small bag and prepared to ride home as agreed. She found herself reluctant to leave, which surprised her. Part of it was knowing she would lose 2 days of work with the horses, but if she was honest with herself, a larger part was simply not wanting to leave Colt's company. He walked her to where Clementine was saddled and waiting. "Will you be all right riding alone? It will be dark soon." "I know these roads well enough. Clementine is sure-footed." "Still, be careful." He hesitated, then added, "I will miss our evening talks." Olivia's heart did an unexpected flip. "I will miss them too," she admitted. Their eyes met, and something passed between them, a recognition of feelings that neither was quite ready to name. Then Olivia mounted her horse and rode off into the gathering dusk, very aware of Colt standing by the corral watching her go. The reunion with her family was joyful. Her mother looked better than she had in weeks, and Thomas proudly showed Olivia all the work he had done around their small ranch in her absence. William and Henry peppered her with questions about the horses and the camp, and for one perfect evening, everything felt normal and good. But Sunday passed too quickly, and Monday morning found Olivia riding back toward the river camp, her heart inexplicably light despite the hard work that awaited her. When she arrived, Colt greeted her with a smile that seemed almost relieved. "How was your family?" he asked. "Good. Everyone is doing well." She dismounted, noticing how his eyes seemed to brighten at her return. "How were the horses?" "Restless without you. I checked on them morning and evening, but they clearly prefer your company to mine." The second week brought new challenges. Now that the horses were comfortable with basic handling, Olivia began introducing them to saddles and the weight of a rider. This was the stage where many horses would panic and buck, where rough breakers would employ harsh methods to force submission. But Olivia was patient, spending hours letting each horse grow accustomed to the saddle pad, then the saddle itself, then finally a small amount of weight in the stirrups before she ever attempted to mount. Colt was present for more of this work, his business apparently completed for now. He would help by holding lead ropes or simply standing ready in case a horse spooked, but mostly he just watched Olivia work, his admiration evident. "You are an artist," he said one afternoon, after she had successfully ridden a formerly wild gray mare around the corral at a gentle walk. "That is what this is, really. Art. It is just patience and understanding," Olivia protested, but she was pleased by the compliment. "It is more than that." Colt leaned against the fence. "You have a gift, Olivia, a real gift, and watching you share it with these horses, it is something special." His words warmed her in a way the summer sun could not. She had spent so long feeling like a workhorse herself, valued only for her labor, that being appreciated for her skill and passion was intoxicating. And increasingly, she found herself watching Colt as much as he watched her, noticing the way he moved, the sound of his laugh, the kindness in his eyes when he looked at her. Their evening conversations grew longer and more intimate. They talked about their fears and hopes, about the losses that had shaped them and the futures they were trying to build. One night, Colt spoke about the guilt he carried over his mother's death. "I was 16 when she died," he said, his voice rough with old pain. "Old enough to work, to contribute, but not old enough to take over the way she needed me to. If I had been just a few years older, maybe I could have shouldered more of the burden. Maybe she would not have worked herself to death." "You were a child," Olivia said gently. "You did everything you could." "Did I?" He stared into the fire. "I watched her fade away day by day, and I felt so helpless. After she died, my younger siblings went to live with relatives, and I struck out on my own. I was angry for a long time at the world, at God, at myself. It took years before I could channel that anger into something productive, before I could build a life I thought she would be proud of." Olivia reached out and placed her hand on his arm, a gesture of comfort. He looked down at her hand, then up at her face, and the intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. "She would be proud," Olivia said softly. "You are a good man, Colt Kincaid. Your mother raised you right, and she would be proud of who you became." His hand covered hers, warm and strong. "Sometimes I think I was waiting for something," he said quietly. "Building my ranch, working so hard, always alone. I told myself it was because I was not ready, because I needed to establish myself first. But maybe I was just waiting to meet someone who understood. Someone who had walked a similar path." Olivia's heart was racing. She knew she should pull her hand away, maintain the professional distance that propriety demanded, but she could not seem to move. "Colt, I know this is complicated," he continued, his thumb tracing small circles on the back of her hand. I know you have your family to think about, responsibilities you cannot abandon, and I know I hired you to do a job which makes this inappropriate. But Olivia, these past 2 weeks, getting to know you, watching you work, talking with you every evening, I have to tell you I am falling for you. Hard. The confession hung in the air between them, charged with possibility and risk. Olivia's first instinct was to retreat, to protect herself from the vulnerability of caring for someone, from the potential of loss and heartbreak. But as she looked into Colt's eyes, saw the sincerity and hope there, she realized she had already fallen. Despite her best intentions, despite knowing better, she had fallen in love with this gentle, thoughtful cowboy who saw her as more than just a worker, who valued her gifts and understood her struggles. "I am scared," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I have so many people depending on me. I cannot afford to make mistakes, to get distracted, to let my heart lead me somewhere impractical." "I know," Colt said, "and I am not asking you to choose between your family and me. I would never ask that. But Olivia, what if it does not have to be a choice? What if there is a way to build a life together that honors your responsibilities and gives us both a chance at happiness?" "How?" she asked, wanting desperately to believe it was possible. "Finish this job first. Train these horses the way only you can. But when it is done, when I pay you and we part ways, I want permission to court you properly. I want to come to Fort Bridger, meet your family, show you that I am serious about this, about you." Tears pricked Olivia's eyes. When was the last time someone had offered to help carry her burdens rather than add to them? When had anyone seen her not as a solution to their problems, but as someone worthy of care and devotion? "Yes," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "Yes, you can court me." Colt's face lit up with a joy so pure it made her heart ache. He lifted her hand and pressed a gentle kiss to her knuckles, a gesture both chaste and full of promise. "You will not regret this," he said. "I swear to you, Olivia, I will spend every day proving I am worthy of your trust." They sat by the fire for hours after that, holding hands, making tentative plans, allowing themselves to dream about a future together. Colt talked about his ranch in Colorado, about how there was plenty of room for her family if they wanted to move, how her mother could have access to better doctors in the larger towns nearby, how her brothers could attend school and learn trades. Olivia listened, hardly daring to believe that such a life could be possible, but feeling hope bloom in her chest for the first time in months. The third week brought a new urgency to their work. Olivia was determined to complete the training in 3 weeks and earn the full $75, not because her family needed it desperately anymore, but because she wanted to prove to herself and to Colt that she could do it. The horses responded beautifully to her methods, and by the middle of the week, all 20 were riding reliably, responding to basic commands, and showing none of the fear or aggression that characterized roughly broken horses. Colt brought potential buyers to view the horses on Thursday, and they were universally impressed. "I have never seen Mustangs this well trained," one rancher said, shaking his head in wonder. "Usually takes 6 months to get a wild horse this reliable, and even then, they are never this calm." "I have a very talented trainer," Colt said proudly, his eyes finding Olivia across the corral. The look he gave her made her blush, and she quickly turned back to the horse she was demonstrating. By Friday, it was clear that Olivia had succeeded. All 20 horses were fully trained, gentle and responsive, ready to be sold to their new owners. Colt gathered the horses together, running through a final assessment with Olivia, and when they finished, he just stood there shaking his head in amazement. 3 weeks, he said. "You did it in 3 weeks. Olivia, this is incredible. These horses are better trained than ones I have seen worked for months." Pride warmed Olivia's chest. She had done it. She had completed what seemed like an impossible job and done it well. "They are good horses," she said modestly. "They just needed someone to see their potential." "Like you," Colt said, stepping closer. "You just needed someone to see your potential too." That evening, their last at the river camp, felt bittersweet. Tomorrow Olivia would return to Fort Bridger, back to her family and her responsibilities, and this strange, wonderful interlude would end. But it was not really an ending, she reminded herself. It was a beginning. Colt prepared a special meal, having somehow acquired fresh vegetables and even a small cake from town. They ate by the fire as the sun set, and when the meal was finished, he presented her with a small leather pouch. $75, he said, placing it in her hands. As agreed. You more than earned it. The weight of the pouch was substantial, representing more money than Olivia had ever held at once. It was security, stability, breathing room for her family. But even as she clutched it, she knew the real treasure she was taking away from these 3 weeks was not the money. It was the realization that she deserved more than mere survival. She deserved happiness, love, a partner who saw her value. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "For everything. For this opportunity, for believing in me, for," she faltered, then continued, "for seeing me. Olivia Morgan, you are impossible not to see." Colt reached out and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering on her cheek. "You are the strongest, most capable, most beautiful woman I have ever met. And tomorrow, when you ride back to Fort Bridger, I am going to give you exactly 1 week to settle things with your family and rest. Then I am coming to court you properly, with flowers and good intentions and a ring in my pocket." "A ring?" Olivia's eyes widened. "Too soon?" Colt asked, looking suddenly uncertain. "I know we have only known each other 3 weeks, but Olivia, I am 26 years old, and I have never felt about anyone the way I feel about you. I do not want to play games or drag this out. I know what I want, and what I want is you. As my wife, as my partner, as the person I build my life with." Tears spilled down Olivia's cheeks, but they were tears of joy. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, it is too soon, and yes, it is crazy, and yes, I will absolutely marry you." Colt laughed, a sound of pure delight, and pulled her into his arms. Their first kiss was sweet and tender, full of promise and hope and the kind of love that could weather any storm. When they finally pulled apart, both were smiling through tears. "Your mother is going to think I am insane," Olivia said, laughing. "Agreeing to marry a man I have known for 3 weeks. Your mother is going to think you are smart," Colt corrected. "Because you are getting a husband who adores you and who comes with a ranch and a sustainable income and a desperate desire to take care of you and your entire family." They talked late into the night, making real plans now. Colt would sell the trained Mustangs for a significant profit, then return to Colorado to prepare his ranch for a family. Olivia would use the $75 to secure her family's immediate needs and explain to her mother what was happening. In 2 months, in the fall when the weather was still good for traveling, Colt would return to Fort Bridger and they would marry. Her mother and brothers would move to Colorado with them, where there was space and opportunity and a chance for everyone to thrive. It was ambitious and audacious and utterly impractical, and Olivia loved every aspect of the plan. The next morning, saying goodbye was harder than she expected, even knowing they would see each other again soon. Colt helped her saddle Clementine, his hands lingering on her waist when he lifted her into the saddle. 2 months, he said, looking up at her. "I will count every day." "So will I," she promised. The ride back to Fort Bridger felt different than any ride she had taken before. The sun seemed brighter, the air fresher, the future full of possibility instead of merely obligations. When she arrived at the Morgan homestead, her brothers came running and her mother emerged from the house, her face lighting up at the sight of her daughter. Olivia dismounted and embraced her mother, then gathered her brothers close. "I have so much to tell you," she said, laughing as they all talked over each other with questions. "Come inside, all of you. Our lives are about to change." Explaining everything to her mother was emotional. Catherine Morgan cried, but they were tears of relief and joy rather than worry. "A good man," she kept saying. "Thank the Lord, a good man who sees your worth." Thomas, with his 14-year-old seriousness, wanted to know all about Colt's ranch and prospects. William and Henry were simply excited about the adventure of moving to Colorado. And Olivia, watching her family's reactions, felt peace settle over her like a blanket. This was right. This was how their story was supposed to unfold. The next 2 months were a whirlwind of preparation. Olivia used the $75 to pay the mortgage and settle their debts, with enough left over to begin purchasing supplies for the move. She returned to work at Crawford's ranch, not because she needed the money anymore, but because she loved working with horses, and Crawford had offered her better pay and fewer hours when she told him about her engagement. Colt wrote letters every week, long, detailed missives about his preparations in Colorado and how much he missed her. Olivia responded with equal fervor, and she found herself counting down the days until his return. When Colt finally rode into Fort Bridger in late September, the aspen trees were turning gold on the mountainsides, and there was a crispness in the air that promised winter was coming. Olivia saw him from the window of their small house and flew out the door, propriety forgotten, launching herself into his arms when he dismounted. He spun her around, laughing, then set her down and immediately dropped to one knee. From his pocket, he produced a simple gold band with a small diamond. "Olivia Morgan, will you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" "I already said yes," she reminded him, laughing through tears. "I wanted to do it properly this time," he said, grinning, "with your family as witnesses." And indeed, her mother and brothers had gathered in the doorway, all of them smiling. "Yes," Olivia said again, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." The wedding took place the following week at the small church in Fort Bridger. It was a simple ceremony, attended by a few neighbors and the ranchers Olivia had worked for. She wore her mother's wedding dress, altered to fit her, and carried wildflowers that Thomas and William had picked. Colt wore his finest clothes and could not stop smiling the entire day. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Colt kissed her with such tenderness that Olivia felt her heart might burst. This was real. This was her life now. She was married to a good man who loved her, who saw her as an equal partner, who wanted to build a life with her. The journey to Colorado took 2 weeks, with Colt, Olivia, her mother, and her 3 brothers traveling together in a small wagon loaded with their possessions. It should have been exhausting, but instead it felt like an adventure. The boys explored every stop along the way. Catherine's health seemed to improve with each day away from the harsh Wyoming climate, and Colt and Olivia stole moments alone whenever they could, still learning each other, still marveling at the reality of their union. The Kincaid ranch was more beautiful than Olivia had imagined. The house was modest but sturdy, with room for everyone. The land was rich and green, with excellent grazing and a clear stream running through the property. Colt had spent the past 2 months making improvements, adding rooms to the house and building new corrals and a small barn. "Welcome home," he said, helping Olivia down from the wagon, and the word felt right. This was home. Not a place she was struggling to maintain, but a place she could help build into something wonderful. Catherine Morgan cried when she saw the house, saw the room Colt had prepared specifically for her with a real bed and windows that let in the morning sun. "You did this for me?" she asked, her voice breaking. "You are family now," Colt said simply. "This is your home as much as it is ours." The boys immediately set about exploring, running through the property with the kind of carefree energy that children should have. Watching them, Olivia felt something loosen in her chest, a tension she had been carrying for so long she had forgotten it was there. That night, in the room they would share as husband and wife, Colt held Olivia close and murmured against her hair, "Happy." "More than I thought possible," she admitted. "For so long, happiness felt like a luxury I could not afford, but now, here with you, it feels like my birthright." "It is your birthright," Colt said firmly, "and I am going to spend every day making sure you remember that." Their first year of marriage was full of hard work, but also joy. Olivia and Colt worked together to build up the horse breeding operation, and her gentle methods attracted attention from ranchers throughout the territory. Word spread about the Kincaid Ranch and its miraculous horse trainer, and soon they had more business than they could handle. Thomas, under Colt's mentorship, developed into a skilled horseman in his own right. William showed an aptitude for blacksmithing and was apprenticed to a master in the nearby town. Henry, still young, attended school and thrived under the stability and security that had been missing from his early childhood. Catherine Morgan's health improved dramatically with proper medical care and the absence of constant worry. She took over managing the household and garden, and watching her mother smile and laugh again was one of Olivia's greatest joys. But the best news came in the spring of their second year, when Olivia realized she was pregnant. Telling Colt was one of the happiest moments of her life. He lifted her off her feet and spun her around, then immediately set her down gently as if she were made of glass. "We are having a baby," he said, wonder in his voice. "Olivia, we are having a baby." Their son was born in December of 1884, during the first snowfall of winter. He came into the world squalling and healthy, with his father's dark hair and his mother's determined chin. They named him James, after Olivia's father, and Catherine wept with joy when they told her. Colt was a devoted father from the first moment, and watching him with their son made Olivia fall in love with him all over again. He would walk James around the property, pointing out the horses and cattle, talking to the infant as if he could understand every word. "Your mother is the most amazing woman in the world," Colt would say, and James would make baby noises as if in agreement. 2 years later, their daughter was born, a tiny girl with blonde hair and blue eyes that seemed to look right into your soul. They named her Catherine, after Olivia's mother, and the elder Catherine declared it the greatest honor of her life. The Kincaid Ranch continued to prosper. Olivia's reputation as a horse trainer grew until people were traveling from 3 states away to have her work with their animals. She trained other ranchers in her methods, passing on the knowledge her father had given her, ensuring his legacy lived on. Thomas eventually started his own ranch with Colt's help, on land adjacent to the Kincaid property. William became one of the most sought-after blacksmiths in Colorado, known for his fair prices and quality work. Henry, the youngest, decided to become a teacher, inspired by the education that had been made possible through his family's move. Catherine Morgan lived to see all her children settled and happy, and when she finally passed away peacefully in her sleep at the age of 62, it was with the knowledge that her family had not just survived, but thrived. Years passed, and the Kincaid Ranch became one of the most successful horse breeding operations in Colorado. But more than that, it became a home filled with love, laughter, and the kind of deep contentment that comes from building something meaningful together. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Colt and Olivia stood on the porch of their expanded house, watching James and Catherine play in the yard. A third child, a son they had named Colt Jr. but who everyone called CJ, napped inside. "You ever think about how different our lives could have been?" Olivia asked, leaning against her husband's strong frame. "If you had not offered me that job, if I had been too scared to take the risk." "I think about it sometimes," Colt admitted. "And then I thank God every day that you were brave enough to say yes. That you trusted me, trusted us enough to take a chance." "Best decision I ever made," Olivia said, turning to kiss him. Even after 10 years, his kiss still made her heart race. "Second best," Colt corrected with a smile. "The best decision you ever made was agreeing to marry me." Olivia laughed, the sound carrying across the property they had built together. "You might be right about that." As the sun set over the Colorado mountains, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Olivia reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From a desperate girl working 2 ranches just to feed her family, to a successful horse trainer, beloved wife, and mother, her life had transformed in ways she never could have imagined. And it had all started with one cowboy who saw past her exhaustion and desperation to the strong, capable, worthy woman beneath, who offered her not just a job, but a chance at a different kind of life, who loved her not in spite of her responsibilities and struggles, but because of the strength those experiences had forged in her. The Wild West could be harsh and unforgiving, but it could also be a place where dreams came true, where hard work and love could build something lasting, where 2 people who had known loss could find each other and create a family and a future together. As darkness fell and the stars emerged, Colt and Olivia called their children inside, gathered around the table for dinner, and gave thanks for the abundance in their lives. For the food on their table, for the roof over their heads, for the love that filled every corner of their home. And for a chance meeting at a fence line on a hot summer day, when a cowboy looked at a tired woman and saw not just someone who could do a job, but someone who could change his life forever. That moment, that decision to take a risk on each other, had led to everything good that followed. Years later, when James and Catherine were grown with children of their own, and CJ had taken over the day-to-day running of the ranch, Colt and Olivia would sit on that same porch and watch the sun set over the land they had built together. Their hair was gray now, their hands weathered by decades of hard work, but their love had only deepened with time. "No regrets?" Colt would ask, as he had asked 1,000 times over the years. And Olivia would smile, take his hand, and give the same answer she always gave, the answer that was more true with each passing day. "Not a single one. You gave me everything I never knew I was allowed to want. A partner, a purpose, a family that thrives instead of just survives. You taught me that working hard does not have to mean working alone, and that accepting help is not weakness, it is wisdom." And Colt would kiss her temple and pull her close, grateful every day for the woman who had walked into his life covered in dust and exhaustion, who had gentled not just his horses but his lonely heart, who had shown him that love was worth the risk of vulnerability. That family was something you built through choice and commitment as much as blood. The Kincaid Ranch would continue for generations, passed down through James and his children, a testament to what 2 people could build when they chose to believe in each other and in the possibility of a better future. And in the family stories passed down through the years, the legend would be told of how it all began, with a woman working 2 ranches to feed her family, and the cowboy who hired her for one job that paid for both, and in doing so, gave her everything she had ever needed and more than she had ever dreamed.